Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 177. Today, I'm excited to be sharing an interview that I did many months ago. You'll notice during the conversation that the references to the seasons and animals and plants are totally out of sync with what's happening right now, and that's the reason. Back then, I did a series of interviews which I've had waiting to be released, and here today I'm in conversation with Trina Walton. Trina is a science teacher in a nature-based school. And we talk about all sorts of things, including modeling nature journaling for your students by journaling alongside them, learning from the experience of folks in your community, surveying stream biology on Biodiversity Day, and lots more. Let's listen. Trina, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. This is a really special treat to meet you and to get the chance to hear your story today.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to be here.
So, as a science teacher, you guide young people towards nature, but I want to hear about your own experiences when you were a young person and your nature connection experiences in your early years. Have you always had nature in your life?
Definitely when I was younger. In fact, I was listening to one of your podcasts with Mary Jo Hoffman, I think. Mm-hmm. So her childhood is similar to mine. We had a sort of a chaotic neighborhood with children just running everywhere with really no structure or supervision. And I grew up in a big family, as did all the other neighbors. And we have sort of an interesting neighborhood because, again, Mary Jo Hoffman mentioned Bauhaus. Well, the founder of Bauhaus is Walter Gropius, who worked with my dad.
Wow.
So there's an interesting connection. And they started an architects collaborative, and they bought land, and they all designed their own houses on it. So I grew up with these sort of unique modern houses that, and nature-wise, they were nestled into the woods. You know, they didn't do a clear cutting. You know, when you build, you sometimes you take down a lot of trees. And I visit once in a while, and they're in a way very humble homes compared to some of the new homes these days. And I had that lovely, the woods in the back, you know, we definitely explored all those woods. We rode ponies around. We had these little ponies that we could ride everywhere. And like a snowstorm, when the roads were closed, we'd ride ponies down our street. But I think just exploring around our house was definitely part of my nature introduction.
Yeah, I love these stories, and I always ask this question, as you know, and I love that those early experiences, and often they're not something that a child reflects on. It's just every day. It's so much a part of childhood. Being outdoors is just so natural for children that it's not remarkable for people at the time. And then on reflection, like, oh yeah, that did feel good. Oh yeah, that did give me a sense of wonder or a connection with insects or birds or whatever it is.
Yes, yeah.
And tell me about your nature now. Set the scene for me when you go out exploring nature in your region. What do you see?
So we're in a fairly rural environment. We're not suburbia here, but we do have houses near us, but we have 2 acres of land and gardens. And we actually have, not asimilar to my childhood, we have a wonderful community. So we're, in February, we're sapping trees, getting maple syrup.
Wow.
Right?
Tell me about that. That's so exotic to me.
Well, we have a neighbor who runs a show. Okay. But she's recruited us for years to lift buckets off the trees because they collect the sap. She boils it down. And at the end, she gives us some syrup that she's boiled down. But it's become a neighborhood phenomenon. So we have the next, I'm older. I'm 65 years old. So I've been doing this for a while. But we have the next generation of kids coming in, which I'm very grateful because I can't bend as well as these kids or lift buckets as well as they can. So that's just part of this area. But honestly, I take a walk with my dog every day. And right now I'm sort of fascinated by caterpillars because that's what's happening right now here. Caterpillars, insects. And so I'm always observing, taking photos, drawing them. And I'll be sharing those with the children I teach. I took a lot of photos of caterpillars this summer, so I'll blow them up and color copy and share them. But this street is full of interesting things and plants. And so it's a wonderful place to be in nature, really.
Yeah, the caterpillars is an interesting one. So is that a cycle you've noticed? So you're at the end of summer coming into autumn.
Right.
Is that the time when the caterpillars are very active?
Yes. Yeah. And actually, a lot of them have already changed to their butterfly form. But there's one, actually, I'm watching a Cecropia, which is a very large moth. And I've been watching it all summer because my daughter found it. But they're very big. They're maybe 4 inches, 3-4 inches. And I've been watching him for a while. So I'm waiting for him to do his cocoon and again, taking photos. And I actually transported him to my house because he was on the street. And they have this machine that cuts all the brushes on the side of the road. Mm-hmm. So he would have been just cut down.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, so I had the same plants at my house. He was just a quarter mile away. So I brought him to my home, put him in with the plants that he's used to, and hopefully he'll make it and transform, and I'll get to see the whole thing, which is kind of fun.
I did that one time. We here have, it's called a common crow butterfly, and when it makes a chrysalis, it is the most incredible, shiny, metallic, gold and silver chrysalis. And the first time I saw it in the wild, I was just astonished by this metallic, shiny thing. I was walking with my dad. My dad was a naturalist. He just loved looking at things, and he said to me, "Take it inside, snip it off, and take it inside so you can watch it." And I took it inside, and I had it there hanging, but in a box for a long time. Felt like a long time. And then I started to get really guilty, like, oh no, I've disrupted it. And then
I can relate to that.
Yeah. And then it started to go black, and I had this devastated feeling like, oh no, it's dying. And then instead of the metallic, it was black. And then I realized it's not dying, it's actually opening. And the black of the wings of the butterfly that was inside the chrysalis were coming to the edge of the material. And I watched it for the whole day. It was in the morning that we noticed it, and then I just obsessively watched it for the whole day. And then we ended up seeing it emerge. And it truly, Trina, it was one of the most moving things I've ever seen. And it sounds simple, but because it's so transformational, it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
Oh, that's neat. You got to see the whole process. The monarch here, if you ever heard of a monarch butterfly, they have that gold thread, that gold rim. So it's similar. And they also turn black. Like you said, if you can see that happening, I think it's similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're lucky to see the whole thing. That's pretty neat.
So tell me about your journey. I know that you're a teacher, a science teacher, and I would love to hear about that. Becoming a science teacher, was it something you always knew you wanted to do? Was imparting nature connection to kids something that was always part of you? Tell me about your story in that area.
Definitely no. I actually want to be a veterinarian.
Okay.
Early on, I think I did an internship or something. I was like, well, I guess this is not going to work. It did not work. I just wasn't tough enough. You have to be tough to be a veterinarian. Yeah. And I found that out. Then I did a couple jobs that were not very grand, but I got into microbiology.
Okay.
So I ended up working at Children's Hospital in Boston.
Wow.
And that was a really good job. The quality control, the supervisor, I had a really wonderful peer who just made sure I knew everything inside out. She was a great teacher. So I was very fortunate. And then we ended up moving out here after that. And I became basically a house mom with the kids. And that was sort of the end of that. I did some microbiology out here, but it definitely was pittering out, if you say. And then I started subbing at the school that my children went to. And it was a very small school. It's grown since then. And I just subbed, whenever they needed somebody. And that sort of led to teaching science to the younger children.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started teaching, and then later on did first and second. So that's where I'm at. Been doing it for a fair number of years. I actually don't even know how long I've been doing it. And that's been really good. That's been really good. I'm learning all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm always tweaking the curriculum. This school is pretty fabulous. It's a nature-based school. It doesn't mind me trying new things like nature journaling.
Yeah.
That's a new thing there. Definitely got inspired by all of you. And the preschool room, because of COVID, became an outdoor classroom.
Oh, fantastic.
So, just to be healthy, and that's actually an amazing situation. Just the children are out there in full rain gear, in the puddles. They do come in for snack in the winter, but they're out there a lot.
Yes.
And it's amazing to see what these teachers are doing. And they asked me, this is kind of interesting, just in the last year, they asked me to start drawing on a big piece of paper, something we're going to look at. Mm-hmm. And then they put the journals out for the children. So I draw, then we take a walk, and then they journal. And so they see me drawing and they think that helps them want to journal as well.
Yes.
But what they're noticing is that the children are starting to care about their land. Mm. So their playground, they have woods, and they have a general area to play in, like a sandbox area. And they're starting to know everything, and they're starting to be chaperones sort of it.
Yes.
So it's kind of an amazing thing to watch,
This is wonderful that you have been able to bring in nature journaling, that you can tweak the curriculum as long as you're staying within certain boundaries. You can bring in nature, and that you've noticed that their sort of sense of care and stewardship has been growing over that time. Yeah.
It is amazing. It's and like I said, the school's always growing, and field trips. I'm trying to coordinate some field trips, and we'll see. Right now, we're curious about mushrooms and insects and seeds. That's our next couple of weeks. Yeah,
I love that. One thing you said I find really important, which is that you're modeling the drawing part of it, because I think it can be hard for some kids, or people in general. Kids are more free than adults, in fact, but the idea of picking up a pen and just putting something down on paper can be intimidating sometimes. But if they see an adult doing it, it becomes, oh, this is what we do, and they can just dive in. I love that you're modeling that for the kids.
Yeah, and it wasn't my idea. I guess I drew things on the sidewalk for the teachers, and then they said, well, this seems to be your strength. So so they came up with the idea, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Why not?
And the kids out there, I love the image of the kids out there in their all-weather gear, and not letting the changes in the weather to stop their nature play.
No, they are real full weather gear, as they say. It's amazing. It is.
So you also started a Nature Journal Club, and I'd love to hear about this experience of how you started it and what your meetups look like and the community that's growing around nature journaling where you are.
So there isn't any nature journal group here. That's why I started it. Mm-hmm. It's funny. When I came into this podcast, I was thinking how many people I'm grateful for, including you, John Muir Laws, Claire, Leslie Walker, all these people who have picked up their books, or, I've had amazing art teachers also. So what I guess I'm trying to say, that I have all these influencers, and it sort of came to a head. So during lockdown, I picked up some amazing books. I already had some great art classes. And I noticed there's nothing happening here. And I just decided we got to try this. And we also have a local bird club, and they've been advertising for us, and they've been really good about advertising. Every time I have a group meeting, they put the news out there for me. So again, I have all these people to be thankful for. I have a friend who's definitely helped me run the show, because we have a website as well. And I'm trying to figure that out, to be honest. I'm trying to figure out my website. I'm still learning.
Yeah,
I'm always learning.
These technical things they can be such a big hurdle, and once you get going with it, it feels natural. But in the beginning, I remember that too. Starting a website was so complicated and sort of a barrier that you get like a technological block about these things.
Exactly. So during lockdown, all these things came together, I would say. And so in June of 2021, I guess I just started with the local bird club again. It's called the Ethel Nature Bird Club, and I just started with them. And we have like a core of. It's funny, we all are about the same age, and we're all females, and we're just consistently meeting every month.
Yeah.
And again, this wonderful friend of mine is really good about picking out places that we can meet and have adventures. And she's also a stream biologist, so sometimes she'll sample things for us and show us what's in the stream.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then again, I'm just grateful for the people I know, the people in the group that are consistent, educate me all the time, right? They teach me about mushrooms. They teach me about the birds, the plants. So I sort of feel like I'm just absorbing all this great stuff. And then I go home and journal it and can't wait for the next adventure.
This is the wonderful thing about gathering community around you, is because each person brings their own history, their own skills. The fact that you've got birders, you've got a stream biologist, you've got all sorts of different people is so amazing.
Exactly.
I would love to hear some of the places that you find around you. It seems like there's a few places that you go to regularly that are maybe becoming important for your group.
Yeah. So, the next one is Barton Cove, which is a fern walk. And of course, I have another friend who's a fern expert. So she agreed to meet us there. And she did this. This is her second year doing it. And I feel very honored that she's going to join us because she definitely knows her ferns. And again, this good friend, she knows places that have stream intersections. There's two streams that come together. And so she helped us with that. There's a lot of places. We have something called the Quabbin Reservoir here.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard that before. It's a reservoir that supplies water for Boston, the city east of us. And it basically started because they flooded 4 towns. I think it's 4.
Wow.
They literally flooded these towns. It's eminent domain, and they flooded these towns. People had to move.
Wow.
But the result is it's a huge body of water that has all these nature paths to it that are amazing. So we do go there to different paths going into this Quabbin Reservoir. So that's a whole story in itself. But yeah, there's just so many nature walks around here that involve streams or I would say most of them are forest-like. They're not open. Not many are open, if you know what I mean. They're covered in forest, and we're usually in some kind of canopy of something. And yeah, they're all pretty local for us in this area.
It's really good that you have accessible nature really close to home.
We do. We're very fortunate, and it's unending.
I would love to hear a little more about the stream nature journaling things that are from a stream. Listeners love to hear about the specifics of the things that you're noticing when your friend scoops something out of the stream. How does it go? Do you all crowd around? Do you get out your nature journals and look closely with tools? Or tell me about that experience.
So the last one was about streams. Actually, I think it was Moccasin Brook and Swift River. And it was in Petersham, Massachusetts. So we met there. We all parked. And my friend Kathy was already sampling. So because she's a stream biologist, she has these big waders.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean by right? She has big waders. She gets in there, and we have white pans, and she samples all these things. And one of her jobs is to figure out if the stream is healthy.
Okay.
And so she tells us what macro invertebrates are there that indicate it's healthy.
What kind of things were they? Do you remember?
Yeah, stoneflies.
Okay.
Mayflies.
Yeah.
And caddisflies.
Wow.
So of course we're journaling about it. And
did you find examples of each of those?
Yeah. Yep. And it was a very and she's telling us, everything about where she would scoop normally. So she talked to us about the different parts of a stream. And I'm trying to remember, it's like there's something called the run.
Okay.
I'm afraid I can't remember. I'd have to need my journal. But there's parts of it that have more oxygen, or parts that there would be more likely would have organisms. Like she'll lift up rocks, right? There'll be things under the rocks. So she's done that a few times. And of course, I've known her for years and she's taught me all this stuff.
Yeah.
So when it comes to a certain time of year, in spring, I'm going off on a tangent here.
Tangents are great on a podcast.
We have something called Biodiversity Day, which my friend invented for that school that I work at.
That's amazing.
So it's amazing. So the older kids actually have to write down the exact numbers of things they see that are alive in the woods or evidence of living things. And we try to get as many different items as we can. And she, of course, is scooping up things from the local pond. So the children, preschool kids just get to look, the older kids get to take their net and scoop. But it's amazing because she's just, salamanders are big.
Yes.
Kids love the salamanders and frogs. So they're all screaming. Sometimes we get something called a giant water bug, which is very predacious. It can be up to 4 inches big. It has serious pinchers.
Wow.
So that when the kids find that they usually drop.
Yeah.
It is. They drop the net and scream, basically, which I'm glad. I mean, I don't want them touching it, and she doesn't want them touching it. So she's introduced a lot of critters, and of course, I'm learning all this, and I get to help her because I know some of the names, fortunately.
Yes.
Just being with her.
This is amazing.
So it's amazing, yeah.
Do you know one of the best ways to help people connect with nature and start bringing pro-environmental behavior into their lives is to give them an experience of emotion, like a shock of emotion, something full of awe, something full of wonder, something full of joy or surprise or delight. Or those big emotions are the things that help people connect. And it sounds like when you scoop out one of those big bugs that make everybody scream, that's the sort of thing that that's gonna imprint on them, that they're gonna take away. They're not gonna forget that experience.
That's a good point. I'm not sure I've ever thought of that, but yeah, definitely a lot of emotions.
I love that you've got all these people around you that are bringing all this expertise and that you're absorbing it, not only just through their words, but because you're putting it in your nature journal. Do you find that nature journaling is a good way to remember things that you're learning?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So this summer we taught a class. I approached the local library and said, how would you like us to teach nature journaling?
Nice.
And we did, and that's what I brought up. I showed him my nature journal. I said, because I did this and wrote it down, I'm going to remember it.
Yeah.
Right? And I showed him a page of something called is it called the first night? It's when salamanders cross into the vernal pool in the spring in a hard rain.
Okay, tell me about that. I don't know what
So, it's just an important page in my journal, and I did it with my daughter. So, when the temperatures just start getting above freezing in the springtime, salamanders, sometimes a lot of them, I've never encountered that, but sometimes a lot of them cross the road even to get to something called a vernal pool, which is a breeding ground for them. But if you're lucky to catch a lot of them, and there's been children's books about this, but children have learned to use flashlights and to help them across so they don't get run over by a car.
Yes.
So I did it. I've always wanted to do it, and it was raining. I was like, okay, we have to go out. And my daughter, I have 2 daughters and a son, but one daughter was living home at that time, so she went out with me. And sure enough, we found a beautiful yellow spotted salamander, and I think it was 2-line salamander, and a spring peeper, I think, crossing the road at night in the hard rain, and we had flashlights, and we were just like, we were so excited.
Yes.
And it wasn't a big amount of them, but it was the first time I really saw it.
Yeah.
And we did help. One of them we did help across because he wasn't moving very fast, and we wanted to save him.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then you went home and documented the experience in your journal.
Oh yeah. And again, I think somebody influenced me and talked to me about crayons and watercolors. How crayons can resist watercolors.
Yes.
Right? So I did the salamander crayon and did a wash of purple, and rain was in yellow. So I was, it wasn't a clean nature journal entry, but of course, as I said to the people I was teaching, I was like, I'll remember that.
Yeah.
I'll totally remember that moment.
That is amazing. I want to talk. Oh, there's lots of threads in my mind of things I want to talk to you about. First, I want to ask you about the experience of bringing people together and creating a group. If someone's listening and they don't have a nature journal group near them, tell that listener about how they might go about it. What kind of words of encouragement or tips for creating their own journaling group would you give them?
Oh, to start a group?
Yeah, if someone wanted to, if there was nothing around them and they wanted to start creating community, what could they do?
They could advertise at a library. Mm-hmm. I have a nature group here, a bird group. Oh, it's called the Athol Bird Nature Club. And so there is something already here that I can advertise through. Mm-hmm. So some way to advertise, let's meet at a certain time and maybe even give them a link to like John Muir Laws, mm-hmm. Just so they learn what it is, to see if it piques their interest. That's what I would do. Just see if anybody shows up, right? Because I have different influxes. Like sometimes we get a big group and then sometimes there's only 6 of us. So it varies. Yeah.
It's a good idea to sort of partner with other environmental groups or birding groups that are already there and sort of make a little partnership or use their networks to find people who might be interested as well. I like that.
Yeah, they've been really good to us.
Yeah. Another thread. I'm pulling on all these threads of the things that you've mentioned. You said that you had some really great art teachers, and I'd love to talk more about your experience with creativity and whether that has been with you from the beginning. I'm always asking about, early nature experiences, but I'm fascinated with early art experiences too. And a lot of people who I've spoken to have art as a thread running all the way through their lives. And then others have, been free with art as a child, and then there's a break in their connection with creativity. And I'm wondering how it is for you and whether you've always had that with you or you've come back to it later in life.
Yeah, good question. Well, I can say when I was a kid, we certainly didn't buy cards for people, right?
Yes.
You had to draw your own. So I definitely did a lot of that. And I was always drawing, I think, to some extent. Nothing serious, though, nothing serious. And it really wasn't until later that much later, like I'm talking, when I was 50 years old, that I took some art courses. And actually I was taking one this summer and I haven't been able to continue it because school started, but Alex Boone, have you ever heard of him? Alex Boone.
He's amazing.
So I took some amazing courses with him this summer. And then I had a traditional watercolorist teacher who knew all the tricks about watercolors. And I actually stuck with her for a while, but I was thinking about this other teacher. And she's the one who introduced me to indelible pens, using indelible marker, and then just using watercolors to fill it in.
Okay, so you do an outline and then watercolors in the middle?
Yeah, so she's the one who started journaling, like sort of plein air, so being outside and just using, and she didn't call it nature journaling, but I was thinking, that's probably where it all started, So that's where it began, the nature journaling, and I definitely bring my journal everywhere. We went to the Philippines last fall, which is a very big trip for me. Yeah. And my son was getting married in the Philippines, so it was a very important trip. And I brought my little journal, and it wasn't much,
Tell me about the things you take with you. What's your portable kit look like?
Not much. Definitely that water brush, traveling water brush, the indelible pen, which is just, doesn't get smudged with watercolors. And actually, I think, is it Art Toolkit makes these wonderful
the pocket palette.
Oh, I love those.
It's my favorite tool too. I have mine.
It's so simple, right? An eraser and a pencil. So that's basically it.
Yeah.
You don't need much. And probably, I think that's pretty much it. And because I don't want to carry a lot of weight.
Yes. That's why the Art Toolkit is so fantastic. And did you fill yours or did it come pre-filled with the watercolors?
Pre-filled.
Okay.
Pre-filled. Yeah, and actually, I have a problem. I should not buy too many. I'm like one of those people who says, "Oh, I need that. I need that." But
I have this problem.
You really don't. You really don't.
Yeah, keeping it simple is really important. I'm interested about when you're teaching, when you're nature journaling with your school group, what kinds of materials do you take with them? Do you give them watercolors? Do you keep it simple with just a pencil? Tell me about what your kids use for nature journaling.
So they're going to do, actually, we're starting this Monday, pencil and colored pencil. And I definitely encourage them to do everything in pencil first. In fact, if we're in the field and we do go outside a fair amount, it's going to be pencil probably. That's it. I buy the journals for them for the school, and they're not watercolor paper.
Okay.
So they don't really have a choice.
Yeah. I would love to go back. So one of your art teachers taught you about indelible pens and watercolor. I'd love to hear about the things you were exploring with Alex Boone. He's an amazing teacher. I've interviewed him a couple of times on the podcast, and I would love to hear what you were exploring together.
Well, he did streams. Mm-hmm. That's the latest one. Actually, I'm a little sad I'm missing it now. He's doing seeds now, I think. Okay. Trees. We did trees. And that was, so of course I did buy the ink tents. I think it's called ink tents. Those are amazing. Okay. And I did appreciate that product, I have to say. So he really taught me how to do like almost circular coloring of like, he was doing a canopy of trees surrounding a castle, actually. And just the way he used the color pencils, the motion he used changed everything.
Tell me about that.
In fact, I shared that. He was doing circular. It was circular a little bit. It wasn't like back and forth, if that makes sense. When he shaded, he did it like and it really does change the effect of it. And the blending, right? The blending. So that was a really good experience. Just taking that. I mean, I took, I don't know, 3 or 4 this summer. So I was very fortunate.
So ink tents, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, are a Derwent pencil that they look like a pencil, but when you activate them with water, they kind of spring into this amazing, vibrant color. They're really fun to play with.
And there was one more thing he did, which I have to remember because I did forget last time, and I have to say my picture did not come out very well. He makes a little blob with the ink tents as a palette. Okay. So he creates a little color palette with one color.
On a separate page?
Yes. Yeah. Or the side of the page to provide a paint source. Instead of just coloring directly, it's sort of a watercolor palette.
I love picking up these things that then just transform the way you use your materials when you're listening out to other people. Do you find with your nature journal group that after a session you share and then pick up tips and tricks from each other's pages?
Yes, definitely. So we're trying to have a structure. So we've been doing it for 3 years now, and we're trying to have a structure where, I try to read a poem in the beginning.
Yeah, great.
We take our walk, and then we stop at some point and just journal. Some people are a little intimidated by journals, so they'll just relax and observe. Yeah. And at the end, ideally, and this doesn't always happen because somebody might have to rush off, we share. And what I've noticed, some people do really good pencil work. Yeah. One lady was just doing the pen, just an ink pen. Okay. And they're all beautiful. They really are all beautiful. I tend to do pencil because I can't think about color at that point. Yeah. But yeah, definitely. And the perspectives, like Eva, she said this thing one time about people matter in our nature journaling process. She said, include them. So I've been trying to put hands in mine, holding things or sitting. So that's been my perspective lately, even though I'm learning all the time. I mean, it's not like I can draw people very well, but
I noticed this about your pages when I was looking at them, actually, that you include people. And I think it's a wonderful thing. I've talked about this on the podcast before because people have always been something that I've been nervous to include. And I know that other people sometimes nervous to include them too. But I think it puts you in the story, and it puts the people around you in the story of your nature journal page, and it helps you remember the community as well. And I think that it's lovely that Avea said that. And
it stuck with me.
Yeah, I want to do that more. And still, it's a feeling, it's a nervous feeling. Do you ever get that feeling on your pages where you think, I want to include that, but I just don't know how to do it?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
In fact, I was going to, yeah, there's a technique. And again, I was trying to take a course on this, but I couldn't. But this lady frames things. So she draws an outline like a rectangle around your image. And she might even write something in that frame, or she'll design it a certain way. And I love that idea of putting a frame around something. So that's something I want to practice more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I'm nature journaling, I start with the first thing that catches my curiosity or attention. And then I just organically grow my pages out from that, and they're very messy and they're not structured at all, but I do admire the pages that have a little bit more forethought.
Yeah, it does. It's quite the process. It is really quite the process, and I'm hoping, you just keep learning, don't you?
Yeah,
you just keep learning.
Yeah, and it's funny, I recently went to a nature journal meetup here of the Brisbane Nature Journal Club, and I was sitting next to a new friend that I'm developing through the club. Her name is Mary, and she does these beautiful bold drawings on her page. And I was really admiring her boldness and the way she just goes in with the watercolor. And I was looking at mine, and I was there with my fine liner pen and drawing very small sort of fiddly thing. And then she was talking. When we were sharing, she said, I just wish I could get smaller and more tight. And I was like, Mary, my thought was that I wanted to be doing what you're doing. So it's funny that we sort of admire other people's pages. But it's good to take inspiration.
Oh, it is. It is. Oh, for sure. And I loved your art, by the way.
Thank you.
You're definitely inspiring me. There's one thing I wanted to mention, and it's just another tip that we did. So in our nature journaling group, and this is again because of a previous art teacher, we do a February challenge.
Okay.
And you've definitely seen this, where you take a month in February and you have to do an image in every square for every day of that month.
I love this. Tell me about this experience. Yeah.
So again, it's inspired by another great teacher, and so I buy this paper. It's from a company on the West Coast. I'm sorry I can't remember the name, but they print out these papers that are, I'm going to say maybe 17 by 11. They're pretty big, but it's watercolor, and they have 1-inch squares of indentations on it. So it's really quite a pretty piece of paper, and for some reason they sell this paper. So I buy enough for everybody. So
the paper has its own divot kind of thing.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Almost like a frame for each.
Yeah, and I could email you the company, but so I have enough. Every year, and some people want to try it. Some people are intimidated by it, but we try to plug through it every year. It's definitely a tradition now.
So, and what do you put in each square? Is it just something that's capturing your attention that day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it could be a bird. This is winter, so sometimes tracks.
Yeah.
Right. Animal tracks. That's a big one.
Yes.
I'm trying to think. I don't know if I can think of anything else, but bird and animal tracks is probably one of the big ones.
Are the birds active in your winter? Is it a mild winter, or is it covered in snow? What's your landscape like in that time?
We usually get snow.
Yeah.
We usually get snow. It's definitely changing, honestly.
Yes.
Our winters are getting milder.
Yes.
But I put a bird feeder out. After the bears have gone into their torpor state, I put bird feeders out because I love watching the birds in the winter.
I'm fascinated by the nature in other places, and when you mentioned bears and deer or whatever it is you see, it's quite amazing to me. What kind of tracks do you see when you're looking out for that?
So coyotes. One time I saw this indentation in a snowy field near us, and it was an owl.
Oh.
Because there's no tracks leading to it, right?
Yeah.
It was like it just came down, so it made this indentation, and I think we saw a little blood, but it was, where it came down to scoop up the mouse. So that was pretty cool.
That is so cool.
So everything, snow hare rabbits, deer. Deer are big.
Yeah.
And certainly you can see little mouse tracks too, and it's fun because we always take the kids out, at school. And if there's a snowy day, I'm like, we have to take advantage of it. And I try to get everybody out, because it's a special day.
Yeah, absolutely. If someone found some tracks, what's the best way to figure out who made them? Are there guidebooks of tracks? How would
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's many, and they're very good guidebooks, you know. There's some really good books on it. And a lot of them have a scale.
Okay.
So
you know
there's deer and moose, right, which are exactly the same shape, but one's bigger. So we'll actually have a ruler on it, so you know. But the moose is huge, so usually you can tell. And bear tracks are big, so usually you're like, okay, that's not normal.
Yeah. And it's lovely that it must be lovely to have a whole month of observations all there, all together, and it kind of gives it gives an overview of the nature observations for that month once you've finished the page.
Yes, and it comes out pretty neat. And again, everybody's different, right?
Yes.
My good friend, she's more exact, and it's so beautiful to see. And she's in a way more scientific. Mine are a little more messy, but they're all great to look at. You know, they're all amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a really good experience. I'm glad we're going to keep that up.
Yeah, absolutely. When you go out with the kids, how do you structure it? Do you give them prompts? Do you guide them, or do you let them kind of just go for gold?
Definitely structure. Not too much so. You know, if we're looking for tracks, I'll have done the homework and checked an area first to see if there is some. Yeah. So we have a little
good idea.
fun. And then once we get there, I tell them not to step in the tracks so other kids can see them. Don't ruin them. Go around them.
Yeah.
But then I do like to let them run around, because they often children are amazing. They often find more things than I do.
Yeah.
They always educate me. You know, like when they're observing something, they'll say, "Look at that," and I never saw it before. Yeah. So that's typical with the children.
They have an openness, don't they? Have eyes wide open to things, and it's a lovely thing to tune into for us to be reminded to live that way, to have our eyes open in the same way.
Exactly.
Do you?
But usually I have to have a structure.
Yeah. So then you'll tell them, make a drawing, use some words. Do you tell them to use words and pictures together?
Oh, that's a good question. So preschool, it's going to be just, using their crayon, no words. Yeah. In kindergarten, I'm doing that next week. I'm going to tell them, if you want to write something, but they can't really, they can write their name, but I'll probably help them write it. Yeah. Right. I'll say, if you want to describe this, we'll come around and help you write that word. Right. I'll probably give them magnifiers. Yes. If we're looking at something close, because we're looking at rocks as well this fall, we're looking at rocks. So I'll probably give them tools. But with the older kids, I'm going to tell them to write down the weather. And I'm probably going to show some diagrams of the wind blowing. So if they can't write the words, they can at least draw a cloud blowing or sunshine. So I want them to diagram the weather as well as write down the date. Yep. So I do want them to put that metadata in there. And if they want to do more, and sometimes they do more, the second graders definitely write more. I think it's interesting. I have to figure that out, because I want them to have space to write if they want to, in their nature journals. So I have to think about that a little bit.
This is really important. I'm glad that it has come up in this discussion, because I think that adapting the nature journaling experience to different age levels is really important. And the younger ones can't write for themselves, and very young ones, right? Who cares? The experience is just splashing paint around and being creative outdoors, and maybe tapping in and talking. I find that talking with a caregiver or a grown-up is a wonderful way to get them observing. Just that oral nature journaling, almost just noticing together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
it's a good way to describe it.
And then to bring in the words, okay, you've got something to say about this, but your writing you're not ready to write yet.
Right, right.
I'll do it for you. Tell me all the things you notice, and then writing that down.
Yes.
And then as they get older, bringing in the metadata and giving them the tools and the sort of scaffolding to say, okay, let's observe the weather. This is some ways that you could put that down. I love that you're thinking ahead of here are some symbols that you could use, because then that's like the that's the next step. I really love that you're thinking about this different ways to adapt nature journaling as they grow and as they get, and because the process becomes natural for them once they've done it more, they'll know, okay, yeah, we put the date down. Okay, yeah, this is the first step. And then we use, and they might even remember, oh yeah, we use words and pictures together. The older ones will remember that.
Yeah, they do. And sometimes they write a lot, and it's amazing to me, you know, and then they start comparing. Like I remember the older kids on one of our field trips was comparing it, you know, comparing different organisms to other organisms. And I did not expect that. I was like, oh my goodness.
They did that naturally? You didn't guide them to do that? That is so cool.
It's all them. So it's kind of amazing what they come up with.
Do you ever come across the older kids sort of starting to creep in with this, oh, I can't draw feeling? Does that happen or not yet?
I've seen it in grown-ups. You know, we have an amazing art teacher at our school, and I think she empowers them.
Yeah, fantastic.
And they're starting at such a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it that much. And I think it is because there's a strong art program here.
That's really important.
And she, I think she encourages them a lot to just, and I do say, you know, it's not about the pretty picture. It's just about you taking a moment.
Yes.
You know, and I will tell them that, but I don't always have to do that. But because they'll see my journal and they'll be like, oh, you know, but like, it's not about that. It's not about that.
It's interesting, isn't it? When I was journaling with my son, he's kind of moved on to Lego now. He doesn't really come out with me.
I remember the Lego phase.
He's obsessed. But he used to come out with me, and he did compare his journal to mine, and he would say, oh, yours is better than mine. And I would say, what do you like about mine that you don't like about yours? And he would sometimes articulate that and sometimes not. But when he was able to say, oh, you've got more detail, or whatever he said, I would say, how could you do that in your journal? And then I remember this one particular time he had drawn the outline of a leaf, and I had drawn the outline as well as some of the veins and details inside.
Right.
And I said, what do you like about this that's different from yours? And he said, yours has got more things on it. And I said, oh, well, you could observe the veins of the leaf that you're looking at. And I really clearly remember this because this was something I really wanted to guide him through. And he did. He added the veins of it. And then he just sort of sat up, sat up straight. And I said, are you pleased with what you did? And he said, yeah. So it is hard to guide them through those challenges because it comes
I like how you did that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm listening to you going, that's a great way to interact with a child who doesn't quite have the confidence.
Yeah.
He's just say, hey, what do you want to do to this?
Yeah. What is it that you like here that we could do on yours? And it was beautiful to see him sort of and even his body posture changing. And I could see, and I said, are you proud of what you did? Or you like what you created? And he said, yes. And so it can be a challenge to guide those sensitive kids through the art worries, because for some kids or sort of kids with a perfectionist side or perfectionist tendencies,
that's true.
It comes in early. That art fear unfortunately comes in quite early.
Yes, it does. It does. There's exercises out there. Draw with the other hand.
Yes.
Draw upside down. There's all these things, so it doesn't come out perfect, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Have you done some of that stuff with your group or your kids? Put art challenges in front of yourself to make it messier.
No, because I'm not the art teacher, and I think she has though.
Yeah.
I think she's done that. I've been in classes where they've done to me.
Yes.
Right. So I know it, but no, I'm probably not just because I'm a science teacher. And we only have an hour.
Yes. Yeah. So you've got to get down
going
to it. Yeah. So tell me about your own nature journaling practice. Do you find, I'm really fascinated by the idea that, people's lives and people's creativity overlap in different ways. And I wonder if the science teacher in you comes out when you're nature journaling. Do you lean into the sciencey side when you're journaling?
Yes, I would say so. I'm concerned about size and, and there's, again, all these influences. I went to Cape Cod, if you ever heard of that. It's part of Massachusetts, but it's a glacier result in Massachusetts. It's like this sandy area.
Okay.
So of course, I couldn't just journal. I had to find out, well, how did it come to be? How did that sand get there? Then I feel, it's about an ice age that occurred 20,000. So yes, sometimes I get a little nerdy. I call it. I'm getting nerdy. I gotta back off here.
So research comes into it. What's your best way
Yeah.
to research? Are there particular resources you love to go to? Do you just do a Google search? How do you research these things when you go down a nerdy rabbit hole?
Definitely Google, but I'm book obsessed.
Okay.
I am book obsessed. I have a great mushroom book, great book on moss I share with my kids because I have a daughter who's teaching about it.
Oh, wow.
So I definitely have guidebooks, bird books. So those are also a big part of it. I love children's books on science,
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I have a whole huge shelf here that actually fell down this summer because I have so many books. So yes, I love books, and I have a problem there.
I was thinking about my own sort of personal budget recently, and I was thinking about what I spend my money on, and I would say the most, aside from all the just everyday expenses like food and accommodation, books is my biggest spending.
Yes, yeah. I have to, and I love. There's been so many authors I learned about. Margaret Renkel. She's written for New York Times. Anyway, she's an amazing author about nature. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. I love nature writing as well, and how a nature writer can drop you into their environment in such a beautiful, visceral way, and you feel it, you experience it with your senses. I've had this experience with the British nature writer Robert Macfarlane. He's
I've heard about him.
Yeah, he's beautiful. He just he writes a lot in the past about mountains and mountain climbing, and I've just been really dropped into his world through his writing. It's a lovely thing.
Oh, neat. It is. Yeah, who's the other one? Gathering Mosses?
Yes.
Is it Robin Kilmer?
Robin Wall Kimmerer is one of
read her books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her moss book, Gathering Moss, is amazing.
Yes.
You'll never think of moss the same again.
Yes.
It'll be like, changes your world.
You talked about having a garden, and I'm a little crazy about my garden at the moment. And I noticed that you have a bit of a thing about flowers. You love to photograph flowers. Are these flowers in your garden, or do you find them around you in different places?
Probably more. I have zinnias blooming right now, but probably more out in nature.
Yeah.
Because I get surprised when I'm in nature. Like I don't expect these blossoms to happen in the woods, and I'll come across it. So it's usually in nature.
Yeah. I love flowers too. I had the experience when we were in London. We went to the Tower of London, and they'd seeded the moat of the Tower of London with wildflowers, and it was one of the most amazing, moving experiences ever. They were as tall as me, or taller. I'm not a tall person. It was just so moving, and ever since then, I've been crazy about flowers.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to have more in my garden for sure.
Yeah. What do you grow in your garden?
We usually have herbs.
Yeah.
We did tomatoes, right? We did tomatoes, 3 different types of tomatoes. And we usually do garlic, although we didn't do garlic this year. We grow hops. We have one big hops plant.
Really?
So, and that's kind of cool because it just takes off and it just is taller than everything else.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
Basil. So we always make pesto. That's definitely a crop that we want a lot of.
Yes. Yes.
So I try to freeze some for the winter, but we don't have big gardens at all here. I would say I'm still learning on that one too.
It's an amazing thing, isn't it? I think people who, I was going to say it's people who love nature journaling, but I think it's people in general just love, and I'm sort of pondering this question recently about why we love to care for plants. And I think that it's kind of inbuilt in us that
I remember hearing that. Yeah.
Just to have something growing is important to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. And how it changes over the summer.
Yeah.
We have a very simple deck that we sit outside all summer long, and we just love it. We have our tea out there.
Yes.
And just, of course, you have insects on the plants. You have hummingbirds coming in. The butterflies, I have a journal entry of like 4 or 5 different butterflies on a butterfly bush. I don't know if you've heard of those, but
I haven't.
they attract everything. The hummingbird moths, have you ever heard of those? So all these things are happening just by sitting on the deck and being still. You're seeing so much action.
Yes.
And it's just our absolute favorite place in the summer. And it's so simple. It's just sitting out there and just watching.
Yeah. I can feel it. As you describe it, I can feel what that's like to be out there and just watching the activity, watching the nature stories unfolding in front of you. Yeah.
Exactly.
It has been just so amazing to talk to you. Thank you for sharing your story. It's been wonderful to get to know you and hear all about the nature in your area and the way that you're sharing nature with children. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Beth. It's been great talking with you. And I'll keep listening.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Trina. I loved her description of the ways that the community members were able to share their expertise with the group, like learning about stream biology and having that kind of hands-on experience together. And of course, all the amazing activities that are offered to the school kids, them being outdoors so often and learning from the natural world. In the show notes of this episode, you'll find a link to the website of the North Central Nature Journaling Collaborative. If you're in that area, you can contact them and become a part of it all. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week.